Hey, Ohio, welcome once again to the Retirement Blueprint Show with Tim Lofton of Axum Planning and Wealth. I'm your host, Spike Spangle, and all throughout this month, we have been talking about the state of retirement in the United States, how it's going. Mr. Tim Lofton, what else is on your mind this week?
Well, Spike, retirement comes at you fast.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at today's working American, there is so many unknowns for us. It's, I want to retire at this age and I'm going to stay at this job until you can't, until you get called into the office and they say, you know what, they're eliminating our department and now I'm forced into making choices. This is happening more and more in corporate America today, and we've got to figure out a plan. People have to be ready for that type of news and what they're going to do with it.
It's coming so quickly right now. Many times that we've reported on your radio program on WHIO and here on your television show that we are in a time here in the United States where peak 65. The most amount of Americans turning 65 in the next 6 years before 2030 is happening right now. But more importantly, what are the economic effects of this?
Right.
If that many people are turning 65, we have that many more people retiring, that many more people relying on Social Security. That means also that many more people needing Medicare and needing pickleball courts in their neighborhoods. I mean, there are so many impacts of
It's
this.
rare for us to get through a segment without somehow talking about pickleball in America.
It's your favorite. I know it's your favorite, man. Pretty soon we're going to see sponsorship, and it's going to say Axum Planning and Wealth, the retirement blueprint on the back of pickleball jerseys.
Pickleball jerseys, yeah, that's a great idea.
But so with this many people turning 65, I think it's a good idea to get ahead of the retirement planning itself, getting your retirement blueprint, making sure that we have choice in how and when we're going to retire. One thing I think about is downsizing. Look, if this many people are going to go from their really, really large homes and want something smaller, don't you think it's going to be harder to find those flat ranches that everybody wants to retire in?
It's going to be interesting. We're seeing so much infrastructure change today. You look at the number of over 55 communities that they're building. I mean, they're popping up everywhere. They're definitely the writing's on the wall. People are looking for, what am I going to do next? What is my next step? What's interesting in Ohio is that we look at that 55 and over community completely different than somebody in Florida does. Somebody in Florida is going down, they're trying to get on a waiting list to get into this community. Here, people are like, why in the world? I mean, I'm 55, Spike. I'm not ready to move into an over 55 community. I mean, I don't feel that way. What are we going to see when people start to retire in the numbers that they're going to retire in? What are they going to spend their money on? Where are they going to go? What drains on the system, like you just brought up, between Medicare, medical, all these different things are all going to change dramatically over the next 5 to 10 years.
And the new version of retirement today, I'm worried about folks who are relying on old math or old philosophy and going into this new retirement, the new modern retirement. Such as, let's talk about the 60-40. The 60-40 portfolio, 60% equities, 40% in bonds, supposed to be relatively safe, right? Relatively neutral. A little bit of growth, but also some income. The 60-40 got destroyed last year because of interest rates, and actually over the last 2 years because of the raising of interest rates. Can we use the 60-40 as that middle-of-the-road portfolio allocation all the way through retirement today?
Well, where the 60-40 and these time-dated funds, like I'm going to own the 2035 fund or whatever the case may be, a lot of this was designed because of us as a consumer. We want that one-size-fits-all. Okay, I'm 65, I get the 60-40 portfolio because the textbook says I should, and everything's going to be fine, until it's not. We saw a 17% decline in 2022 with the 60-40 portfolio. Safe? I don't know. You tell me. If you had your $1 million portfolio go down almost $200,000, do you feel that
didn't feel safe?
That didn't feel safe, right? And so, what if we get away from that old style of thinking and no longer worry about, I'm at a certain age, I should have a certain asset allocation, and started being more specific, more intentional with what we're doing, and instead of looking at it as percentages, look at it as, what do we need? So our income plan says we need $40,000 a year. I know that this amount of money I have to set aside in my portfolio to generate that 40,000. That's not going to have volatility. That's not going to have risk. I can't by the definition of what its job is. But that frees up now the rest of these dollars to have growth. Well, wait a minute. I'm 65. I'm not supposed to have growth. I'm not supposed to take risk. Well, you are with that money because that's its job. That's now 30-year money. I figure out the income piece that frees up the growth. Has nothing to do with asset allocation, has nothing to do with age. It has to do with the job of the money.
I'm going to ask you a very specific question. I don't know if you can give me a direct answer on it, but are bonds no longer a safer asset class to be in? I know that the concept is that they're longer term, they're a version of debt actually, and you purchase it and you get a set rate. But because of interest rates and because of the fact that we don't know where they're going over the next 2 years, is that still a safe haven for today's retiree?
Well, as I listen to our wealth management team in the office, they're very excited right now about bonds, not so much because the rates are higher, which is obviously a good solution. That's usually why we buy bonds and CDs, is for that fixed rate. But there's an interesting situation now that's timely in that if the government reduces interest rates, the bond values will actually go up. And so for the first time, we're able to get a really good interest rate with the potential of capital appreciation on something that is relatively safe. That is time specific. Over the long run, it really just depends on the situation. It depends on how the blueprint needs to be built.
All right, I'm sure you have this information in front of you. Exactly which bonds should I buy? Sorry, man.
So that's a great question. We could definitely get somebody the answer to that in the office. More importantly, what should your plan be? What do you want to have happen? How is your retirement supposed to look? That's going to allow us to back into the roles of the money that you have set aside to support those goals.
All right, folks, we want to let you know that you can get started on your very own retirement blueprint. Call the phone number you see down there on the bottom of the screen. We have folks standing by right now at our secure call center who will schedule that appointment. There is no cost, there is no obligation. Tim will input your information, including how and when you should be taking your Social Security, take a look at efficient tax planning for you, talk about estate planning, your health care choices, and most especially, your income needs in retirement. If that sounds of interest to you, if you're serious about retirement planning, call the phone number below. Get started on your own, no cost, retirement blueprint. A little bit more about market volatility in the following message, and then we'll come back with more Tim Lofton.
You know, one of the things that we're seeing in the office today is people are coming in with statements that are down 15, 20, 30%, and they're still needing that same income withdrawal, which means the percentage they're taking out from their portfolio is now higher, which increases that risk of running out of money in retirement. This is where planning for volatility really comes into play, and it's the biggest shift that we're making for new people coming in our office, trying to help them recover what they've lost, but also make sure that they don't run into that same situation down the road. When you're looking at retirement planning versus pre-retirement planning, that's the difference. One is about accumulation. It's about growing your money over time. Once you get to retirement, it's about distribution, which is a different strategy. At our office, what we focus on is giving jobs to the money. It's making sure that the dollars that we need to produce income have that volatility removed. That allows us to take risk in other areas because we have our income figured out. If volatility has been an issue, if you're looking at your statement right now and it's down 15, 20, 30%, do you know how you're going to get back? Do you know what you're going to do in the future if that happens again? If you don't, sit down with us for a complimentary review. Let us design a retirement blueprint to help you retire and, more importantly, stay retired.
This is the Retirement Blueprint Show with Tim Lofton of Axim Planning and Wealth, a retirement income specialist himself. I'm your host, Spike Spangle. We're still this month talking about the state of retirement planning here in the United States. Have you had your buddy Bill Bengen over for dinner recently?
Bill, yeah, Bill and I, we text all the time.
Okay.
Bill Bengen, interestingly enough, we've heard this thing, the 4% rule, and basically the idea is that I can take a 4% withdrawal from my nest egg and have it in a 60-40 portfolio, and I will not run out of money. That's the idea of it. And he did this study, 93, 94, that basically looked back at almost 50 years of history. The problem is that 50 years of history included extremely high interest rates. I'm not talking about the interest rates we have now that we think are high. I'm talking about the interest rates back then. You look back at the 70s and some of the double-digit inflation numbers and double-digit taxation that we had in America. That was the basis for this study. And so obviously we haven't seen those level of interest rates on the bond side to support those returns. So the problem we run into is what is called sequence of return risk. This is looking at not that you got bad markets, but when you got bad markets in your retirement. So if you retired in 2008, you had a different experience than somebody who retired in 2009. Completely different, because the market, you got in and retired at a high and saw a unbelievable sell-off.
Yeah.
The person that retired in 2009 retired getting to go into a market that then went up for multiple years. The timing matters. Not the timing of your investment choices, but the timing of when you receive those bad markets.
Right, and this is one of the reasons why we try to lock in, especially those first few years, going back to what you always say, giving jobs to the money.
Right.
Because I think it's very difficult for our viewers out there to try to time their retirement. Are you saying that we need to wait for a certain kind of market before we're able to retire, hope that everything is on the upside and then jump out? Or are we trying to secure that money during those last few working years? And how do we do that?
That is a great question, and this comes up a lot. Somebody will say, you know what, I'm 2 or 3 years out, I should get super conservative, right? Because I know I'm going to retire, and I don't want anything bad to happen. I know I may not get a lot of growth, but I'm just worried about the state of insert your worry here.
Yeah.
Here's the problem.
Election, taxes, Social Security,
Right.
markets, the market about wars and conflict around the world, whatever it might be that moves the markets around.
Here's the problem. If I retire at 65, my life expectancy is 25 to 30 years. I can't get super conservative and then have the money last 30 years of inflation, 30 years of taxes, 30 years of rising cost of living, and have enough left over. I have to be more intentional. The whole idea of giving jobs to the money is exactly that. I'm taking out the worry of volatility in my portfolio with the money that has to create income. I'm now worried about the volatility only in the money that I'm allowed to have in growth. And that is long-term money still, even though I'm 65 years old.
Right. I was talking with somebody recently. I got on a call because I was talking about the Secure 2.0. Sorry, you're going to say, where is this trail going? But it's the possibility, the door has been open for us to have annuities inside our retirement accounts at work, things like 401ks. And someone brought up to me, said, well, the thing about an annuity is there are often caps, there are participation rates.
Right.
So the 100% participation in things like stock funds and bond funds, you get all of that growth, but the problem is you get all the downside too.
Right.
How do you feel about something that might only have 80% participation but without downside inside your retirement account? Is this a tool you're interested in inside the 401k, or would you prefer to do it outside?
I would prefer to do it outside, and the reason is that I don't know what that option is going to be. With things like mutual funds inside of a 401k or time-dated funds, is that I kind of know what I'm going to get. If I own a growth and income mutual fund or I own a growth fund, I know that there's different performance, but they're going to pretty much follow a similar path. When you get to things like annuities, they're so specialized, and a lot of times they're very niche-y. In other words, a insurance company may design a product designed for somebody that is this age with this situation. Well, there's not a way to make that broad, I don't think, across everyone's needs.
Yeah.
We've seen this type of plan actually through TIAA-CREF. They have a similar program. You see it in the universities because they kind of own that university market space, and there is a annuity option inside of it, but I've seen it fall short a lot of times as we've reviewed plans with people that have had that type of option.
Right. There is another option that I learned actually from you on one of our radio programs. You're on WHIO. We're on WHIO on the weekends. And you talk about the in-service withdrawal. And I said, hey, Tim, people are driving around right now doing their errands, listening to a radio show, talking about... Can we maybe take a little bit more time and explain in-service withdrawal while people aren't driving? Hopefully they're just sitting at home on their couch.
I'm hoping you're not watching the show on your smartphone as you're driving around. That's
Yeah.
So the idea of an in-service withdrawal came out of a lot of lawsuits back in the 80s and 90s, and it was basically saying, hey, you kind of got me trapped here. I'm getting close to retirement. There's other things that I know I should be doing, and those options aren't available to me. So if you are 59 and a half, most retirement plans will allow you to do what's called an in-service rollover. In other words, you still keep your 401k, you can still contribute to it, but you're taking that money and rolling it over to an individual retirement account that you now have control over. And so you go from a very small group of solutions inside of a 401k to essentially limitless solutions inside of an IRA. That's where, when we design a plan, if the options that you need for your plan are not supported in the 401k, this allows that option.
And by the exact words of what it is, in-service withdrawal, you're still working.
Yes.
Which meaning you can still contribute to that.
Yes.
You're talking about carving out a portion
Right.
at a certain age, so you are not affected by taxes, 59 and a half. You're rolling it over, and then you have the whole world of investment options, including things like annuities. And when I say the word annuities, that's exactly what the pension plans become. They give it over to an insurance company and they turn it into an annuity. You get payments for the rest of your life. That's what annuity means. But it's not 100% of it. You're talking about carving out a portion, maybe over stages of your life.
And a lot of times people will ask, well, why can't I do that at 40 or 45? You know, there's other things I'd like to invest in. And the answer really is that, you know, the growth part inside of a 401k is typically sufficient. I'm not worried about volatility when I'm working. The ups and downs don't matter. I'm worried about growing my money. As I approach retirement, the rules change. I'm getting ready to move from an accumulation phase to a distribution phase. And the distribution phase has a lot more rules, a lot more concerns that a lot of times can't be handled necessarily inside of a 401k. Sometimes they can. If you have other assets and other things, you can kind of make it work. But this is an option that people should at least know about.
Tim, you're not just an engaging broadcaster. You're a retirement income specialist. You do this every single day in the office. And in fact, you created the retirement blueprint itself. When folks reach out to us, if this is maybe the first time they're watching the program or the 100th time they're watching a program of ours, what exactly will they get? Everyone will get the same kind of service from you. It's complete, it's comprehensive, and your inflationary price, it's been out of control. It's no cost. It still blows me away. What do they get when they call in for the retirement blueprint?
Well, what you're going to get is to claim a spot on our calendar to be able to sit down with us, complimentary, and allow us to understand exactly what you want your retirement to look like. Then we're going to set a second meeting, also complimentary, to show you how, with what you've already done to this point, we can make it better and make it last and make sure that you can retire and stay retired. We're going to look at the 5 cornerstones of retirement planning: income plan, tax plan, estate plan, healthcare long-term care plan, and making sure that we have the investments that support that plan.
Call right now so you can get started on your own retirement blueprint. You can use the phone number below, or you can open up your phone to the camera function and point it at that QR code down there. Click on it. It'll take you right over to the website. You can schedule your appointment there. We're going to talk about more solutions for retirement income when we get back with Tim Lofton. But stay tuned. Here's a message from Tim himself about the needs of inflation and why you have to income plan.
The mistake that we see with a lot of people coming into our office is that they made a projection of how much money they were going to need maybe 20 years ago, and they didn't account for inflation in those figures. The average retiree is going to spend at least 20 years in retirement. That means that the cost of living is going to double at least one time. For example, if somebody 20 years ago said, I'm going to need $40,000 for my investments in retirement, that number is only worth $20,000 now. And so they actually needed to make sure they were looking for $80,000 if $40,000 net was their number back then. So as we're looking at the income needed in retirement, we have to have a plan in place that's going to double our income over that same period, or we're going to have to reduce our lifestyle, which is not what we worked all our lives for. Those are the types of things that we try and help clients with as they're planning out their future retirement to make sure that taxes and inflation are covered in those projections. If taxes and inflation are keeping you up at night, give us a call. Sit down, let us do a complimentary review with you and design your very own retirement blueprint. It's our trademark process that we've designed over the last 30 years to help you retire and stay retired.
Welcome back to the Retirement Blueprint Show with Tim Lofton of Axim Planning and Wealth. Compelling message there that you have about inflation, how so many people forget to factor that in. But there's often, I don't know, a symbiosis, if you don't mind me saying, between that and interest rates and what's going on right now. The inflation is high. The interest rates also became high because it was supposed to fight inflation.
Right.
How many things are interest rates going to be affecting over the next year or two?
Well, if you think about it, interest rates impact everything. I mean, think about if interest rates are higher in corporate America, they have now a higher outflow of cost to interest because they borrow money, which means that their profitability goes down. And how do companies change their income to make it work? They charge more money for the product. They charge more money for the goods and services that we purchase for them. It creates inflation from inflation. It creates an opportunity also for us because we have an opportunity to maybe lock in higher rates today with our retirement savings, to be able to maybe look out at the longer term and saying, hey, interest rates are going down. What am I going to do about it? How can I take advantage of this situation?
Right. Can't folks just come up with their own income plan? I mean, there's a lot of online tools. You have all of these calculators with your 401k that'll tell you how much you save and so forth. What do you see as part of the value of working with someone who does it all of the time?
I think the value is that we're going to get all the metrics right. You know, think about it from a planning standpoint. You have to figure out how much are you going to save on a monthly basis to get to your goal. What is the tax scenario once you get to your goal, and how am I going to get that money out and keep it or not keep it? How do I deal with a loss of spouse and replacing their income, replacing their pension? How much should I have in growth? How much should I have in safe money? All of these things are moving targets. We don't know what's going to happen. The only way that we can prepare for that is by developing a plan, a written plan that outlines each of those different areas on what we will do. It reminds me, you know, this is the 80-20 rule, right? As an infantry officer, it was drilled into my head. You spend about 20% of your time planning the mission and about 80% of your time figuring out what you're going to do when the mission doesn't work out. That's life, right? I mean, that's how life comes at us. We have this idea of how retirement's going to be, but then all of these things happen to us that we weren't expecting. That's why the retirement blueprint was created, to give you the answers to the what ifs.
Right. And with all of these different changes going on, I don't think there's any assumption that interest rates will go up, right? Everybody's talking about the fact we think interest rates would go down. And the domino effect, how will that affect bonds? Well, obviously, they will have less value in the longer run.
Right.
But does that make what we have now more valuable? Does that make the cash that we have now in 4%, 5% interest-bearing accounts, will those remain? How are we trying to lock in some of this money? Because I don't think interest rates will go up any higher, at least not in the short run.
Well, a conversation that we have in our office for the last 20 years is somebody comes in and they're like, I got way too much in my money markets and savings accounts, and it's not doing anything. Well, for the first time in a long time, it is actually doing something. I mean, you're getting 5.5% on liquid money. That's amazing, but it's not going to last. We know it's not going to last. Interest rates are going to come down. So how are things going to be impacted? Well, some of the good is that, you know, we've seen a slowdown in housing because of interest rates. People saying, wait a minute, I can't get the house I want anymore because I can't afford it. The interest rates are too high. So as interest rates come down, that'll free up money for lending. More people will take advantage of that. We could see, another push on the real estate side. But I don't want to miss out on locking in some of those higher interest rates with my retirement dollars, because that is an opportunity that could be very much short-lived.
Right.
And we could see that change literally in the next few months.
We talk about that emergency savings, and we like to have 3 to 6 months. But emergency savings is also a different kind of bucket that we talk about in retirement, because that also might be the paying the bill money, right? The monthly money that we need. But we also don't want to be overloading into that right now. Again, we see those very good rates out there at 4 and 5% for safe money. Hey, if that's beating inflation.
Fear is keeping people on the sidelines. I mean, that's I've had so many people just in the last few months that have come in the office and are like, we've got a lot of money. We know we would like to invest it, but we're scared to death. We don't know what's going to happen with Washington and the election. We don't know what's going to happen with interest rates. It looks like the market could blow up any minute now. They have all of this pent-up concern, and so they do nothing. The good news is at least they're getting a decent interest rate on doing nothing. But action is where the opportunity that you have comes to fruition. It's actually making a choice. That choice gets freed up when you have a plan. You have a plan, it allows you to see, okay, I'm no longer afraid, and here's why.
Tim, you just opened up a can of worms, though, and we got to wrap up today's program. What about those election cycles? What should we be doing? There's folks who say we should get out of the markets. There are folks who are saying we want to load up into it. How do we react?
Well, it's pretty easy, Spike. We're not on today's show to talk about the red or the blue. We're here to talk about green, your money. That's what matters today. That's what matters on this plan. Which way the election goes doesn't change the fact that you have to retire and that you have money right now that needs to have some attention paid to it. That's what we want to do.
I want to make sure I get it right. The retirement blueprint, your income, your investments, taxes, estate planning, healthcare choices, how and when to take your Social Security, all of that wrapped up into one plan. Am I leaving anything out?
That's pretty much it, Spike. And that is a customized plan, not a booklet we send out to you. That is something we create for every person that comes into our office. We design it for you and your family to make sure that you can retire and stay retired.
Tim Lofton, thank you very much. I'll see you back in the radio booth in a little bit. Thank you so much for watching the Retirement Blueprint Show. Get your retirement blueprint by calling the phone number you see down there on the bottom of the screen. Thank you so much for watching. We will be back again next week.